Evening, sir.
I take it you saw my message.
Yes, sir.
Did you forget that today was Tuesday?
Oh, sir, I just been exhausted because I've been on the road all day and I had it confused for 5 o'clock. I was in the class
Oh,
earlier.
oh, you were in class early. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you know where your classmate
That might
is?
won't make it today, though.
Oh, okay. Go on.
As usual, I don't know about Remy, but that might won't.
All right. Um, in that case, all right. So we're 20 minutes into the session, but we usually don't use up the entire 2 hours anyway. Um, with that in mind, do you know if Damoy would be up for a reschedule, or is it okay for me to continue or start now and he rely on the recording? Would you be able to ask him? Hello?
So you were saying
Yeah,
something?
man. I was saying that we're 20 minutes into the session, but as you know, we don't always use up the whole 2 hours anyway. So I want to know if it's a question of us rescheduling, since Damo isn't here, um, if rescheduling actually beneficial for Damoy, or if we should just continue and have him rely on the recording. That would be me asking you to see if you could contact him and ask him what he'd want. And also, you tell me what you want.
I don't think I'll be able to get in contact with him because he's pretty sure he's out of town today.
Okay. All right. So in that case, we continue as usual.
Sure, sir.
All right, cool. Let us begin. Give me a sec. So today is Tuesday. We're looking at session 3. A session that I did not think I would like very much. But in my preparation, I realized I realized that I have a lot of examples that I can give you that I tend to use pretty often. So it's stuff that I am very familiar with for the most part. Maybe not in the context of how it's been talked about in the lecture, but the concept is still mostly the same. You can see my screen?
Um, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right. So today, what we're going to be doing is talking about code-free BPI. We're going to get into firstly what that is. I'm going to be talking about the different approaches and examples. All right. Um, right. So let me see. I guess just to put on record that we would not have had class Friday gone because of the holiday, and that holiday does not affect class today because holiday was yesterday. I have class on Tuesdays. So let me see. What we'd have covered last week, Tuesday is business process integrations. We'll cover the definition of BPI, business process integrations, and we looked at 6 BPI tools and features. Um, the two main approaches, top down and bottom up. And we also looked at an extended hotel scenario activity. Yeah. So what we're going to be doing today is covering the last piece of Unit 5, which is code-free BPI. All right. And we can start Unit 5. What was a while ago? Unit 4, we're ending using Unit 4 today. I was starting Unit 5 on Friday. All right. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, this is what we covered last week, and this is what we're going to be moving on today. So we're going to be looking at what is code-free BPI. So the definition, code-free BPI or business process integrations. Sometimes you can call it no-code BPI or low-code BPI. Is an approach to designing integrations without writing any traditional programming code. So real quick, let me ask, have you ever heard of no-code or low-code implementations in any context at all, Tariq?
First time I'm hearing that word.
First time hearing of it. Okay, no problem. Um, all right. Just to be absolutely certain, you said first time you're hearing that word. I'm talking
Yeah,
about
but
no
I'm familiar
code.
with the drag and drop on, so
Okay, okay, okay. So maybe you just haven't heard it being referred to as no code or
yeah,
low code.
yeah.
All right, give me one sec, hold on. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. So um, yeah, code-free BPI is very often called no code or low code, right? So it's an approach to designing integrations without writing any traditional programming code. Instead of typing out logic into a code editor like your VS Code, you would build your integrations through visual interfaces, your drag and drop tools, and your plain language rules, similar to the stuff that we'd have looked at last week. So now here's an important thing. It's not a brand new concept, right? Um, we'd have talked about this. We'd have talked about the building blocks of this for the most part, leading up to last week. Especially when we're talking about three of the six BPI tools that we'd have covered last week or covered before, right? The three that I want to draw your attention to are visual drag and drop, as you mentioned, natural language syntax, and also business rules. Yeah. So those are the foundation of code-free BPI. When you combine those three into a single platform, what you get is a code-free BPI environment. All right. So I don't want you to think of code-free being, magical or anything like that. It's very much built on coded, I guess, approach, but it's built in a way where you build the code so that so that the application or the platform can be maintained or altered without having to go in and use more code, right? Um, Let me see, where am I? We've already discussed one accessible platform. Sorry, one sec. Yeah, I think we'd have gone through some scenarios last week where we talk about how we can have people that are not technically experienced go into an application and make changes or do integration contributions to a platform without actually knowing very much about the code that builds the application, right? Um, so, well, I guess since you said it, I can tell you, one of the strong foundations of the code-free BPI approach is a visual drag and drop, right? Um, well, I guess the three of them, visual drag and drop, natural language syntax, and also the business rules, right? So if you're able to combine those three approaches or those three implementations or those three concepts, we'd be able to achieve a no-code integration platform. All right, so let me move on to this. So what we're going to be looking at now is what defines a code-free BPI platform. We're going to be looking at 6 characteristics that show up across virtually all of them, all of our code-free BPI platforms. I'm going to take them step by step. So the first one, the visual workflow design. So everything is built in a graphical canvas. You have your drag and drop system that is used to represent systems or actions, like your boxes. Each box would represent either a system or an action. And then you'd have connections that's drawn in between them. And that would allow us to configure each step using forms or arrows or drop downs, drop down menus or text boxes. And those text boxes wouldn't allow you to write any code, or rather, wouldn't ask you to write any code. They'd just be asking you to write simple, plain English text, right? So we wouldn't be using a code editor in this case. We'd just be doing a simple drag and drop, drawing our connectors, and each box would represent our actions or our platforms, or rather our systems, right? Let me see. I can give you an example of that. So Let me see. I'm going to pull up an application that I started using somewhat recently called Railway. Let me see. Railway. I don't suppose you've heard of Railway, have you? Mm. All right. So taking a look at this. If you can see my screen, can I zoom in? Yes, I can zoom in. Each one of these boxes that you see on screen, let me spread them out so that you can see the connectors in between them. No, let me close this. So it looks like a garbled mess, but the paths make sense. Each one of these boxes that you can see on screen, each one is a system, right? So these three down here, these three are applications, Python applications. And these two systems up here, these are two different databases, right? So I'm able to use this application called Railway or this platform called Railway to implement the connections in between my different applications. I have different systems that are dependent on other systems. So like these three, let me see, these two, let me see this one too. Yeah, actually all three of them. Oh, all three of them are dependent on both of the databases. So there's a connection, as you can see, between these three applications and this Postgres database. And then we'll have these three applications also being dependent on this Redis database. All right. And what I can do is I can spin up these applications just by creating a new box, assigning what code is supposed to be inside or what application is supposed to be run inside that box. And I'll just drag and drop my systems, draw the connectors, and me drawing a line to each box represents a connection from one system to another, right? If it is a case where I wanted to be able to add a new service, whether it be a database or let me see, I guess a Docker image or a function, I could just click, add a new database. For example, if I wanted a MySQL, I can just click and add a new MySQL. Oh no, why didn't MySQL add? That's crazy. Maybe it's because I don't have any money left on the account, but that's fine. Postgres? No? Okay, no Postgres. But yeah, hopefully the concept is clear. I have each box on screen and each box represents a system or a service, and I can draw my lines to connect those systems to my services. Tell me if that makes sense.
Yes, sir. Makes sense.
Mhm. All right, cool. So I didn't have to write any code in order to connect those systems. The most I had to do is write some maybe configurations in the form of connection strings. Let me see if I can give an example of that. So I have my settings here for my configurations in this panel where anything that I need to specify about the service, where it is physically located, how much resources is allocated to it. All of this is done by me clicking toggles or typing in text boxes and specifying those configurations that way, as opposed to me writing code, right? So yeah, that is the visual workflow design. That's the first one. We're gonna look at the second one now. Pre-built connectors and templates. So the platform comes with ready-made connections to popular systems. Systems like Google Workspace or Microsoft 365, or some common databases like your MySQL and your Postgres. So you wouldn't have to manually build the connections from scratch. You wouldn't have to write any code that connects your system to another database or another platform. You just use what's already there. And when I say use what's already there, I mean you'd use the existing connection. If the connection is not being used, then you can just make the configurations so that the connections are established between your system and the service that you're trying to connect to. So you'll find that a lot of platforms also offer a template workflow for common scenarios. Common scenarios might be like customer onboarding, invoice processing, or even employee onboarding. Now, personally, I don't have any examples of how that could be used in those ways, but there are examples of some other applications that I use that come with a lot of different readily made connections. And one example is Grafana. I feel like I have to ask, even though I feel like I know the answer. Have you ever heard of Grafana?
No, sir. It's the first time I'm seeing this.
Okay. So Grafana is a platform that you can, oh, they have AI in it now, is a platform that you can use to represent numerical data in graphical ways, like graphs and your bar charts and all that stuff. If you want to be able to see statistics, or if you wanted to be able to count logs, you wanted to be able to map out the analytics of a web page in terms of visits, um, anything that can be graphed, you can use Grafana to do that as long as you have a database to connect it to. So Grafana being the application uh, that is meant specifically for graphing data, it comes with a lot of different ways. I don't know if there's anything here I can show you. Oh, look at this. Oh, no, integrations. So it comes with a bunch of different connectors that you can use to connect Grafana to these data sources or these databases. So what that would look like is maybe you're collecting data, customer data, on how many likes of a video has, or maybe how many views a video has. And you wanted to be able to plot that over time. And you're storing that data in a, let's say, a MySQL database. Why not? You would open Grafana and you'd say that you want to create a new plot for a new statistic. You'd go in and you would click on MySQL. You would configure Grafana to be able to connect to a particular MySQL instance. So you just type in where this MySQL database exists, and then it would connect to it. Once it's able to connect to it and read the data in it, it would pull the data it needs, and you would be able to configure how you want that data or that graph to be shown, right? So all of these examples here are the different, oh, look, read this again. These are all the different integrations that Grafana has built into it that you can use to pull your data and create a nice, pretty graph. Yeah. So Grafana is chock full of them. Okay, so yeah, I have quite a bit of experience with Grafana. I don't typically use all of these connectors when I'm using Grafana. For the most part, I want to feel like I will use feel like I've used mainly MySQL database or maybe Oracle. Oh, lie, Influx database. That's the one I use most often. Yeah. So the data that I was graphing was stored in an Influx database. And so I would connect my Grafana instance to my Influx database, and I'd be able to pull the data from the Influx database and then graph it. And it would show me uh, transactions over time. Yeah. Am I making sense? Is this making any sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Just making sure. All right. So that would be the pre-built connectors and templates. And I guess, let me see. I can give you another example of that. One that I started using relatively recently. It is where I'm going to show you 3 different applications, one of which I imagine you should be familiar with. Let me see, hold on. So I'm going to pull up my GitHub, and I'll pull up my Netlify. You're familiar with GitHub, right?
Yes, sir. I use it all the
Okay,
time.
good. Used all the time. Excellent. And then we have Claude. Let me go back to the home page. Where do you find the home page? Is it this one? Okay. So I have my Claude. Let me go to Claude Code. Why not? So I have my Claude set up, right? My instance of Claude is connected to my GitHub account. Let me put this one in the middle since it's the central one. So my Claude account is connected to my GitHub, right? So if at any point I want to be able to spin up a new repository or create a new website or some new application, let's use a website in this example, since I have Netlify over here. I could use Claude, tell it the idea that I have and what website I want it to build, and it will write the code for me. And when it writes the code, it will store it on GitHub. I don't have to do any of the code, and I don't have to do any of the migration over into GitHub, right? So there's a connector between Claude and GitHub. There's an integration connector or connection between Claude and GitHub, right? So Claude writes the code, stores it in my GitHub. The next part that happens is that there is also a connector between Netlify and GitHub. Are you familiar with Netlify?
First, I'm seeing this, sir.
So Netlify is an online platform that allows you to host web pages. So you write your web page, whether it be in just regular HTML and CSS, or your React or Next.js or whatever framework you want to use. You can use Netlify to host those applications to make them publicly available. And Netlify also has a connector to GitHub. So when Claude writes the code and sends it to GitHub, Netlify will take that code and host it on and just host it, right? So I don't have to do anything special for me to get my code from my editor over into GitHub and then from GitHub onto Netlify. There are common connectors in between each one of the systems. So when the code is written, it's sent it to Claude, will upload it to GitHub, and then Netlify will pull it from GitHub and just host the page. And anytime there are changes made to the code on GitHub, Netlify will detect those changes and update the website as it is updated. Update the website as the changes take place. Yeah? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. Um, and I guess another example, I don't know if this is relevant to you. Do you use Discord?
Occasionally, sir.
Occasionally. Do you use Spotify?
Yes, sir.
All right. So are you familiar if, for example, I have my Discord open and I play
And
a
it shows
song
say
in
using Spotify.
come again?
Yes, sir. I
Yeah,
know
it
about that.
shows you what you're
I have
listening to,
my
right? So if I were
Spotify
to,
and
right.
connected to it
So
as
let
well.
me, right. So if I were to go here and show my profile, if I play a song, it should show the song. Yeah. So there is a connector between Discord and Spotify, right? And nobody had to, well, that's not true. There had to be code that allowed us to perform this integration, but I didn't have to write any code. I didn't have to write any code to tell Discord that my Spotify is here and this is my username and this is my login or whatever, right? I just had to click a button and it asked me to sign in to my Spotify, and it would authorize the connection and I'd be able to use it. Make sense?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. So this is what we're talking about when we mention these pre-built connectors and templates. Good. All right. Wait, did I have one more example? Let me check one sec. Where's my notepad? So I had Grafana, Claude, Discord, and I showed Railway. Yeah. So those were the examples I had. Way more examples than I thought I had for this topic. All right. So that is number 2. Question so far, we're good.
Very good,
Good,
sir.
sir. All right. So number 3, the natural language rule definition. So our business rules, business rules are expressed in plain English language in this scenario. Example, when a new order is created, send a notification over to the warehouse and update the customer's order history, right? So a rule that's defined like that, it would not necessarily need to be written or translated into code. You read the rule and you understand it, and there's no translation needed. So a rule that is said, just like how I said it a while ago, could be written in an application and be interpreted by the platform, and it would carry out the necessary actions based on that definition or that rule. Yeah. That is number 3. So 4 now, cloud-based delivery. So you find that most cloud-free BPI platforms run in the cloud as a SaaS product. Remember we talked about SaaS?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Software as a service.
Right, exactly. So you'd log in through a web browser. You'd build the integration similar to what I showed you a while ago on Railway. Railway is a online application. I didn't have to download anything. So you log in to through your web browser. You build the integration, and then the platform handles the hosting, the scaling, and the maintenance for you. You don't have to deal with any servers, installing any operating systems, dealing with any security, because the platform handles that stuff for you. So you don't have to do any installation and you don't have to manage any infrastructure. All you care about is you creating your services and connecting, making the connections, and you forget about all the rest because the platform handles the rest of it for you. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. I guess in a way, technically, that is similar to Netlify as well, because when I'm using Netlify to host my websites or my web pages, I don't need to spin up any servers. I don't have to manage the operating system that the server runs on. I don't have to manage any of the system resources like the CPU or the memory or the storage or anything like that. I just tell Netlify, here's my code. I want you to make this website publicly available. Yeah. And I click a button and it spins up the web page and then it's available. Right. Anything security related is handled through configuration or is handled entirely by Netlify. Um, so yeah, that is an example of our cloud-based delivery. What else? Number 5, our business user accessibility. So the whole point of this concept is that non-technical staff can use the platform or use these platforms. The interface in a case like this would be designed for business analysts. It will be designed for operations managers, or even process owners, not just developers. Anybody that understands the business process will be able to contribute to building the integration. And number 6 is rapid deployment cycles. So this one is going to play into one of the advantages of code-free BPI. So rapid deployment cycles. So because there's no code that needs to be written, we don't need to do any tests. We don't need to do any debugging or any manual deployments. Integrations can go from an idea to a working solution in a matter of days or weeks. Maybe not even as long as that. It can happen in a matter of minutes, I guess, because AI is a thing now, right? So, oh yeah, and also another advantage of this is that you can make changes on the fly. So just like how I would have shown you a while ago in Railway, where if I wanted to, for example, add a new service, I could just click a button, specify that I wanted a new MySQL service spun up. And in the example I showed you a while ago, it didn't work for whatever reason, but it would be as simple as just me clicking a button, specifying that I wanted to have a new database spun up, and then I would just draw the connection. So these changes will be able to be made very quickly. And the speed that you're given because of this concept is one of the biggest selling points. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. So since we're talking about selling points, let us then go into the 5 advantages or 5 of the advantages of the code-free BPI. Just a while ago, we we're talking about speed. So let's continue with there. So speed of implementation. So it would normally take a team of developers like maybe 6 months, can now be done with a small development team or a small business team, actually, maybe just a few weeks or maybe a few days. And I mean, originally or realistically, let me not say realistically, I have in my notes it takes a few weeks, but I know that because of AI, that can be cut down from a few weeks to maybe a few days, right? So that's why I said a few days a while ago. And also I made a distinction where originally it would have taken a team of developers months to deploy or design and deploy a platform. Now, because of the code-free BPI solutions, it would not necessarily need the input of a developer. It might need the input of maybe just one developer, but we don't need a team of developers to carry out the entire integration anymore. It could just be done by a small team of business users, people who are maybe somewhat technical or maybe not technical at all, right? For organizations that need to move fast, this is a game changer. If a new regulation drops in the market, or if a new competitor enters the market, or let's say, for instance, customer expectation shift, then you as the business user will be able to quickly respond instead of waiting for a deployment cycle. So when I say deployment cycle, not deployment cycle, development cycle. What I mean by that is typically in a case where you have a software development team, they would sometimes choose to work in a situation where instead of writing code and making changes to the publicly facing application as soon as their changes are done, they would stagger their updates to be like maybe 2 weeks or maybe a month. So they'd stockpile a list of changes or a list of bug, well, maybe not bug fixes, maybe feature changes over a certain amount of time, and then they plan on when they're going to release a particular feature or a particular update or a change, right? So in a case like that, where we're talking about developers, in that scenario, you would have to wait until the next planned deployment release window to be able to implement those changes. So if it's a case where you have to react to some change in the market for some reason, the market would not be able to benefit from those changes until the next release cycle. But if it is a case where we're not dealing with code, we're dealing with the code-free BPI concept, then you'd be able to make those changes almost on the fly, right? Um, and the reason why we'd have to make those changes and schedule them on a cycle, whether it be weekly or monthly, is because of security. For the most part, security. You'd want to make sure that because there are people that are writing the code and maybe you have people collaborating to write this code, you'd want to make sure that the necessary tests and debugging is done thoroughly before a new feature or a new change goes out to the market. And so using the code-free BPI concept would help to speed that up because there's no need for code anymore. There are just connections that we are connecting or systems that we are connecting using our drag and drop and our plain text configuration business rules. Yeah. So that's one of the first examples. Second example or second advantage rather, accessibility to non-technical staff, something that we've been talking about a lot since last week. This is another big one. So if you recall the hospital scenario from last week, where we're talking about the clinical informatics officer, you remember that scenario?
Yes, sir.
Where that clinical informatics officer, they understood the workflow, but they didn't write any code. Like they weren't a part of the technical team. They understood what was necessary, but because they didn't write code, um, in the event where you have a code-free BPI scenario, this would be exactly what would make somebody like them more productive in this context. Not to say that they wouldn't be productive doing their own job, but it would take their expertise and it would add value to the system integration because they know exactly what needs to be done. And so there would be less time wasted explaining the process to a developer who would then have to translate the idea into code. Instead, they could just go directly into the application or the platform and make their own changes themselves using technologies that are less technical than having to write code. Right? Okay, so that's number two. Number three now, a lower upfront cost. So it's a lower upfront cost because firstly, you don't need to hire a team of integration developers. You don't need to buy any expensive enterprise software licenses because most code-free platforms have a subscription pricing that scales with usage. I want to say scales with usage. What I mean is you pay for what you use. If it's a case where you're not serving your application to very many users, then your application or your deployment would be deployed to a very low performance or let me not say low performance. It would be scaled to a system that is appropriate for the usage. If it's a case where you're only serving to 10 people, then you get a small server, right? If you're scaling to, or rather, if you're serving content to millions of people, then you get a big beefy server, or maybe you get more than one big beefy servers, right? So it scales depending on your usage. And let me see, where are my notes? One sec. Right, so you pay for what you use for. And this is particularly good for a small to mid-sized organization because this would lower the barrier to entry significantly. All right. So that's number three. The fourth advantage, it reduces IT bottleneck. What I mean by that, you know what bottleneck is, right? You familiar with bottleneck?
I'm familiar with the term.
Yeah. So it's like when you have the weakest link. Um, you have a lot of productivity happening through different ends of your platform. But if it's a case where you have one particular part of the system that is restricting flow of data or it's causing a slowdown, then it affects everything. Because, as the adage goes, your team or your chain is as strong as the weakest link. Yeah. So the weak link in that case would be count as your bottleneck. Um, right. So we're talking about reduction of IT bottleneck because in most organizations, IT is a bottleneck for everything. Um, every business request, whether you're going to add a new text box to a form on a web page, or if you need to change the text in a notification, or if you need to integrate a new system, all of those different requests have to go through IT. So they're added to the IT's queue, and then IT has to one by one check off each one of those things and get to them one by one before they can, move to the next one. But in the case of a code-free BPI, this would let business teams handle their own integration needs without having to wait for IT. I almost said AI. Without having to wait for IT, which would free up IT to focus on their actual jobs, right? Or let me not say their actual jobs, but the harder problems, the ones that they're hired to do instead of having to, balance themselves between the different jobs. Yeah. And then the fifth one now, the fifth advantage is easier maintenance and changes. So when business changes, and business always changes, updating a code-free integration is faster than rewriting code. The same business user who built the code, sorry, not the code, built the integration can also update it. They don't have to go through any kind of code review. They don't have to go through any kind of deployment pipeline. They don't have to wait for the next release cycle. They can just make the changes as they see fit because the systems are already built. All they're doing is changing configuration. Yeah. Okay. So that was a whole lot of good, right? And obviously, with the good, there's going to come some bad. So we need to look at some of the limitations that can come from code-free BPI. Before we go into limitations, though, the advantages are listed. That makes sense? Any part of it you want me to go over again, or are we good?
No, sir.
All right.
Understood them all.
Good. Cool. So let's get into the limitations, and we look at 5 of the limitations. So code-free BPI is not some magical thing that we can use to solve all our problems. There are real limitations that you need to understand. So one of the first ones is the customization ceiling. So code-free platforms, they're good for common integration patterns. But let's say the moment that you need something genuinely custom, like some kind of unusual logic or complex calculations or edge cases that you have to satisfy, the platform, if the platform doesn't support it, then you hit a wall, right? So at that point, what you'd have to do is either accept the limitation and move on, or find some kind of workaround, or maybe actually write some code to fill in that gap. For complex enterprise integrations, code free alone is rarely enough. All right. Can I think of any examples? I'm sure I can probably think of a ton of examples, but maybe not right now. One of the examples that come to mind is what's it called again? What's that PHP thing called? What is that thing that people use to make websites and it's blue and it's written in PHP? You know me at about. And it has cPanel. You know me at that? What's it called again?
Design?
Hold on, let me see something. Why did I no code website builder? What is it called again? Not Wix. Jeez, what's it called? Hold on. PHP. I can't move on until I remember. Give me a second, Tariq. What's it called? Okay, never mind. I can't find it. I don't know why I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, it's some platform. It's similar to your Squarespace and your Wix that you can use to just add configurations and add in all of your configurations, and you can build your web page just by dragging and dropping stuff. Man, I cannot remember what it's called.
So
Is that
is it
right?
architect?
No, man, not architect. What name again? And it's written in PHP. I'm Googling it right now. Hold on. Jaja. Let me take out the cPanel thing. What's it called? Framework called. Jeez, I can't find it. Um, all right. Never mind. I cannot remember what it's called. WordPress. That's it. There it is. I found it a while ago. WordPress. You know about WordPress?
Oh yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. So WordPress is one of your um, low code, or I guess you could consider it. No, I would consider it low code because technically you can go in and you can make changes to how some of the integrations are built or how the web pages are built. So WordPress being a web content management system, originally created for tools, blah blah blah. Yeah. So you can use it for low code or no code. And one of the things that I notice is that some people, I don't know if people really genuinely do this, but like if there's a case where you're trying to add some feature or some connection to the web page and the web page is built using WordPress and WordPress does not support it, then they will actually go into WordPress behind the scenes and add the code themselves. I personally don't like to use WordPress, and I don't think I know any developer that likes to use WordPress, but it exists, and I'm assuming it makes a lot of money, so it works for some people. Yeah. But yeah, that's one of the examples that come to mind in terms of when you have a feature that you want to implement and the platform doesn't support it. So you either have to accept it and move on, you find a workaround, or you actually go into the backend and you start writing the code in the platform, right? And one example of that is WordPress. Um, right. So yeah, for complex enterprise integrations, a code-free solution is a very rarely enough. All right. So that's the first one. The second one now, vendor lock-in risk. So when you build your integration on a specific code-free platform, you're going to be tied to that platform. If the vendor raises their prices or they change their terms or they get acquired by another company, or even if they go out of business, then your integration is going to be at risk. Um, Migrating to a different business platform usually means rebuilding from scratch. And that's going to be a very big strategic risk. One of the things that you'd have to consider in a case like that is because a platform or a vendor will design their integration flow a very specific way, if you were to move over to an alternative a vendor because one of the other vendors or the vendor that you're using originally changes their flow for some reason, because the data flow or their integration flow is going to be very specific to their business, when you want to move away to a different company, you're going to have to change your integration quite considerably because of that huge specificity of the vendor. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's one thing to take note of when you're facing vendor lock-in. The third one now, scaling cost. So code-free platforms, they typically charge per user, per workflow, or per transaction. And those three charges or charge models that I mentioned a while ago can also come in the form of per month. So it could be per user per month, or per workflow per month, or per transaction per month, or all three, I guess, per month, right? And originally or initially, it may sound cheap when you're starting out, but as your usage grows, as you get more workflows, as you get more users, as you get more data flowing through the pipeline, the bill is going to start growing with it. So for high volume operations, code free can become more expensive than the traditional development over time. So that's one thing to look out for. And that's how these vendors make money. The vendors that are charging organizations these fees for the code free platform. Right? The fourth one, performance limits. So code free platforms add a layer of abstraction between you and the underlying system. When I say a layer of abstraction, what I mean is that you don't get to see all the nitty-gritty or the behind the scenes work. You don't have to know what's happening behind the scenes. All you need to know is that when you click this button, this particular thing happens. The you're taking an action and the result of the action is what you're paying for. So you don't need to know how it's doing it. You just need to know that this is how you do it and it will be done when you do this thing, right? So you get a layer of abstraction in between you and the where is it? A layer of abstraction between you and the underlying systems that are working for you. So you find that for for most workflows, this is more or less fine. But for high volume, low latency integrations, think, for example, like a real-time financial transaction or a high frequency data feed, the abstraction layer can introduce delays and those delays can become unacceptable, right? So if it is a case where most of the time you're not really going to exactly know what underlying transaction or underlying system is taking your input and providing an output, but if it is a case where you have absolutely no control of how that underlying system works, you're just going to have to accept whatever speed or whatever quality of output you get on the other end. That's when you go with the no code solution. If it is a case where you're using a coded solution, then you'd always be able to optimize or make changes to how the underlying systems work so that you can get the output that your company needs. All right. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
And then the fifth one now. Limited control over the underlying technology. That one feels very similar to the fourth one and the first one. So when something goes wrong inside the platform, you can't always see why because of the layer of abstraction. And you'd be dependent on whatever the vendor makes available to you, whether it's the vendor logs or going through the vendor support team and also the vendor's timeline for fixing bugs. You might find it be a case where when you are approaching the vendor's support team, they're not always able to pick up your issues as soon as you file them because either they're in a different time zone or they're working on other client issues or they just don't have the capacity to pick up your issue as soon as you make it, right? And this can be a problem for mission critical systems, ones that are high visibility because, oh wait, sorry, yeah, ones that are dependent on the high visibility or the ones that are dependent on the very quick low latency throughput, right? So the lack of visibility on the problem can cause problems or cause extra problems, right? So given what we'd have gone through, the advantages and the limitations, a question to you, when would you say is a good time to use the code-free BPI, or when is it the right choice, would you say? And when isn't it the right choice? I want you to think about that for a second and tell me if you can give me an example or an idea as to when you think code-free can be good and we should use it, or when it is bad and we shouldn't use it. Let me
I
see.
said the code-free BPI would be a good solution for a business that's not too tech savvy but wants to go into the tech space. Like they want to,
Mm-hmm.
for example, you have a florist company and they want to go into e-commerce, but their
Mm-hmm.
staff isn't that well versed in IT.
Mm-hmm.
Or they said their staff not as well versed IT, but they have a limited starting IT staff.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Okay.
could implement the code-free BPI where they could use things such as drag and drop and
Hmm.
use the pre-built templates and so on. So they wouldn't have, because it's a first company, they would have enough resources to invest into go from scratch.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So what you'd have described a while ago is in a way pretty similar to like a small business that's starting out. Maybe not
Mhm.
necessarily, but the reason why I related to that is because a big business is usually going to have those teams internal to the organization that will handle stuff like that. So if it's a case where you have some business that is focused on one particular thing, did you say florist company? I think you said.
Yes, sir. Let's
Yeah.
use that as a company because when living in an age where everything is going towards e-commerce.
Agreed. So right, if it's a case where that company doesn't have access to a team internally that is able to handle stuff like that, then maybe going with the no code solution would be good for them, right? Okay, so yeah, that is a fine example. One sec.
And you said
With
my next example for when it would you wouldn't use it.
yeah, right. I forgot I said that.
I'd
When wouldn't
say
you?
for a company that's large and uses as and handles sensitive data.
Right, agreed. So a big company that handles very sensitive data, people's information like money or health related stuff. You don't want to have a case where you, as the big company, is relying on other generic platforms, sorry, other generic platforms that are being used for other different types of systems, right? Because those vendors that are hosting other people's applications, those systems are going to have to be at the beck and call of um those other organizations. So if it's a case where you have some issue with your integration and you want to get support on it right away, you want to make sure that that team is available to you and only you so that you can fix the issue as soon as the issue arises. All right. Another reason is because that hypothetical vendor is creating a system that is supposed to be used by a lot of different other organizations, you may find that that platform that the organization is integrating into has to stretch itself in a way where it's able to work on different kinds of data, right? So that would make it particularly maybe less efficient than it could be, as opposed to a solution that would be custom built for the organization, right? This lack of custom built solution would make it so that the output that you're getting from the integration could be maybe it could be inaccurate or it could be slow or it could be of not a great quality as if you were to build a custom solution going the route of hiring a development team and building a solution directly for that company. Make sense? Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Good. Okay, where am I? Here. All right, let's take a look at this activity real quick. It should be pretty simple. All right. So we're going to be looking at code free or no. So let's look at let's practice applying these concepts. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving you 3 scenarios. Um, and for each one, I want you to tell me whether a code-free BPI is the right choice and why. And again, just like every other thing that we've gone through, there's no single right answer. Um, so I just want to hear your reasoning, right? Okay. So the first one, we're going to be looking at a scenario where we have a 15-person marketing agency and they want to connect their CRM, their email marketing tool, and their project management platform so that when a new client signs up, a project automatically gets created and a welcome email goes out. They have no developers on staff, they only have marketing operations manager. In a case like this, do you think that code free would be okay for them? And if yes,
I'd
say
say
why.
yes, sir.
You say yes?
Yes, because it would
Mhm.
seamlessly connect all of their platforms.
Mhm. But why else? So it's not enough just to say that it would connect their platforms. We need to say why else would it be ideal for them. There are a few things that stand out to me. I want to hear your thoughts.
Repeat, sir.
I was saying there are a few other key terms in the scenario that stand out to me that I want you to pick up on that tell me why it is good for them. So it's not enough just to say that it would seamlessly connect their systems. We need to know why they should rely on this to seamlessly connect their systems. So we're looking at a 15-person marketing agency, and they
Mm-hmm.
want to connect their CRM to an email marketing tool and also a project management platform. Yeah. And they want it so that whenever a new client signs up, a project automatically gets created on their platform and it sends out a welcome email to the client. They don't have any developers. All they have is a marketing operations manager. Are there any things in that scenario that stand out to you that tell you why they should rely on code-free solution? The simplest one being that they are,
So because they don't have any developers on hand.
yeah, exactly. So they don't have any developers at hand. So even if they wanted to, they'd have to outsource it or, they'd have to hire a team. And maybe it's a case where they don't have the resources for that. Yeah. So they may have to fall back on using what is available to them through a low cost of entry, that being your cloud-based SaaS products, right? Another thing that you would want to look out for is how small the team is. So it's not a case where they're this massive business that they need to have some complex process built out for them. The scenario defines a process that is pretty simple, in my opinion, not very complex. It's a standard workflow where you have, a new client being added to the portfolio that creates a new file in an application and then an email automatically goes out. Not very complex, in my opinion. So there are definitely some code-free solutions that you'll be able to use to uh, implement that integration in between their systems. Right? So let me see. Yeah. So I would go in this case with code-free because a small organization that have any developers and the workflow that they're trying to implement is relatively straightforward. All right, so that's scenario number one. Let's look at number two now. A national bank wants to integrate its core banking system with a real-time fraud detection engine. The integration must process 10,000 transactions per second with under 50 milliseconds of latency. Any failure would cost millions. Okay, what stands out? Do we use code free or
So
no?
I said to use code free as it's on
Sorry, hang on. Your internet is cutting in and out,
where
I
it
think,
can.
or your audio is cutting in and out. Could you start over?
Uh, oh, I'd say to use not don't use not code free
Okay. And say
since
why?
since it's a bank where you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with sensitive information and
Mm-hmm.
money.
Mm-hmm.
And the second point would be we can't have failure
Right.
or latency.
Right. So we can't have any failure. We can't have any latency. So with a case where if we were to go the code free route, we would be relying on the competency of the vendor. Um, we'd be relying on the competency of the vendor. We'd be relying on a system that we don't have any view into. And if it's a case where anything goes wrong, we'd have to also rely on the support team of the vendor whenever they're available, which is unacceptable for this bank because they need to be able to handle extremely high volume data with extremely low latency. And they need to be able to make sure that every single part of their system is running exactly as it is spec to be. So if it's a case where they're going low code, they don't have that kind of visibility. And that is not going to fly. All right. So we do not go the code free route in that case. That bank would benefit from having a custom built solution that is written in code for them. All right, so that's scenario two. Sorry. Let's look at number 3 now. We have a mid-sized hospital and they want to integrate its patient record system, their billing system, and their pharmacy system. Similar to the scenario that we'd have looked at on Tuesday. They have a small IT team of 2 people, a clinical informatics officer who doesn't write code, and the workflow includes some clinical decision logic that needs to be exactly right. Patient safety is going to depend on it. So what do you think for this case? Do we go code free or no?
So I think hard on this one.
Okay. That's good because this scenario
Because
is a tricky one. Go on, I'm listening.
even though they want to connect their systems, which are the
Mm-hmm.
billing, the pharmacy, and each EHR,
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to use code free, but it's a hospital that as like once again with sensitive patient
Mm-hmm.
information,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuck in between.
All right. I like the way you say it. You're kind of stuck in between, which could imply that maybe you'd want to take a hybrid approach. So like maybe you'd want to use code-free solutions for some parts of the workflow. Maybe some parts of the workflow are standard and not very complex. Um, but then the parts of it that require any kind of rigorous testing or any kind of safety critical decisions, you'd come up or you'd implement a specific solution, a coded solution, a custom built solution for that part of it. Do you agree?
Yes, sir, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this scenario was meant to be, it was meant to invoke the idea of a hybrid approach. So yeah, again, it's not always going to be a case where you go this route or you go that route. It can be a mix of the two, um, or some combination of that. Yeah. So the third scenario is the kind of the scenario that you would most likely be facing in a real life situation where most decisions are not going to be a pure yes or no. They're going to be about understanding the trade-offs and making an informed decision. Yeah. All right. So I think, let me see. That should be it. So we'd have completed, let me see. We talked about business process integration. We'll cover the 6 BPI tools and its features. We looked at the 2 approaches being top-down, the top-down process-centric scenario solution, and we looked at the bottom-up code-centric solution. And then just now we'd have covered the different code-free BPI advantages and limitations. So yeah, that should be it for unit 4. Um, so we should be able to move into unit 5 come Friday, I believe. Let me just check something real quick. Mhm. So key takeaway for what we'd have covered, code-free BPI solutions. They're powerful when the use case fits. When you have a small to mid-sized organization, you have standard workflow patterns and business user-driven projects. You use BPI, code-free BPI solutions. But it's not always going to be the right choice when you're looking at a high volume, low latency, mission critical, or highly custom integration, right? So knowing when to use which is going to be a real skill that is good to have. So on Friday, when we start Unit 5, we're going to be navigating or pivoting over into evaluation and testing techniques. And in this unit, we're going to be covering testing approaches. where our testing approaches seem to have very similar names to the some of the stuff that we'd have gone through already. Testing approaches like Big Bang, top down, bottom up, and the sandwich. That sandwich one is new. Another thing that we're going to be looking at is something that we'd have mentioned before, uh, kind of not in very high detail, but stubs and drivers. We'd have looked at how stubs and drivers are used in top-down integration and bottom-up integration. We're also going to be looking at the sit process. Oh, wait, should I go on the next slide? I think I did one already. Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, we're also going to be looking at the sit process and the evaluation techniques. But yeah, that'll make a lot more sense when we get to it. The last thing I want to mention is a reminder. Well, not really much of a reminder. I don't think I've said this already. I'm going to be posting the coursework for this course on Canvas. I'm going to be posting them tonight. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be posting all of them. We have already done one. So I think we'll have, is it four more? Coursework 2, 3, 4. Is there a fifth one or is it just three more? I need to confirm. I think it's just three more. But yeah, I'm going to be posting them and I'm going to be setting the due dates for each one. And I'm going to be basically following up with you guys to make sure that we're working toward getting through each one on the respective due dates. Because I need to make sure that we have all of them done before the semester is over or before teaching is done, right? So you can look out for that. It is not to say that you have to wait for me to tell you when to start doing the work, since they'll all be posted and I'll be setting due dates for each individual one. If you want, you can do your research and you can get right into it and you can finish them as soon as you want to. Some of them may not allow you to that because some of them are going to be presentations. And also I'm considering the group work aspect. So seeing as how it's only 3 people in class, I may look into there are 2 group works. One is a group presentation and one is a group project. Depending on the workload, I will consider making it individual work. And I guess you guys can give me your feedback on whether you want to do it individual or one big group, since it's just 3 of you. So
So
I'll
man,
post.
the one big group approach there, because in similar cases we had other classes where it was just the three of us,
Mhm.
and some most of the group work the courseworks were group.
Okay, got you. All right. Well, like I said, there are 2 of them. I think what I'm going to do,
Mm.
I'm going to revisit it and I'm going to see if I can make one of them one big group work with the 3 of you. And then I think I'm going to turn the other one into individual work, but that's not confirmed just yet. When I
Yes,
post it,
sir.
you'll know. So you can look out for that. So yeah, I'm going to try to post them tonight. So yeah, that should be it. All right.
Uh,
Cool. So I will see you on Friday.
take care, sir.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Later.